Our fourth speaker is Richard Kingston from the University of Manchester, and he's going to give us his perspective on geodesign for smart cities.
Thank you. Ready to go. Right, well, thank you for giving me this opportunity this morning to talk about geodesign and smart cities. Now, I don't have any pretty pictures of tropical islands. There are no maps in my presentation either. But this is kind of a critical reflection, really, based on over 15 years of research now around using GIS-based technologies to try and engage people in decision-making, and more recently how has this evolved into this term of smart cities. Now, smart cities was mentioned this morning by the minister, the Dutch minister, the other Henk. And some work that is just about to come out in the Journal of Environment and Planning A, where we take quite a critical view of what smart cities are. And the minister this morning was referring to the fact that big software companies, IBM, Cisco Systems, Alcatel-Lucent, are all developing what they will call, well, for example, IBM developed a smart city solution in a box. This concept that they can come along to local authority A or B and plug their technology into the city system and it will solve lots of problems. And he was referring to some medium-sized cities where this isn't necessarily the case. So for a lot of cities who are now calling themselves smart cities, it's more about an urban strategy and a way of promoting themselves, because if they're not seen to be smart, the suggestion is, well, they therefore must be dumb. So I could offer, I've got not a lot of time this morning, but there are league tables now of smart cities and what is a smart city. And I think for Europe, Vienna comes out as in a European context, one of the smartest cities in Europe, where not necessarily the case. It depends on how these things are constructed and things. But a lot is being written about smart cities from a technical perspective. But as I say here, there's a sort of conceptual adolescence which relates to the digitization of cities. And the thrust from the technology companies coming into cities and saying that they can solve problems is often been it's overtaking sort of cities stepping back and starting to think about whether or not they really need these kinds of technologies. And it's argued a lot of these smart city systems are data-driven, big data. You need big data to feed into these systems to allow them to work. And Mike Batty has been writing a lot recently about big data offering many opportunities for smart cities, but there are all kinds of risks around privacy and security around collection of data. So there's an example in the UK at the moment where if you walk past a fairly well-known UK-based supermarket chain with your smartphone on, it can detect whether you actually, when you walk past that store, whether or not you walked in to that store, and if you did walk into that store, where you walked around in that shop, without necessarily your knowledge of that happening. So I think for city decision makers, they need to be attuned to some of the pitfalls associated with smart cities. And this is just some images and examples of sort of some of the ways in which cities are promoting themselves as smart cities. And anywhere around the world now, you'll find cities claiming that they are a smart city. You could, some would admit, probably Amsterdam, and having the smart in the middle of their name there. Amsterdam and Barcelona, certainly Europe, are at the forefront of promoting themselves as the smart city. But this is a session about people and geodesign. And often we forget about the citizens, the general sort of normal citizens who live in cities, and get carried away with the fact that we have this technology and we're kind of playing games with this technology now. It's a sort of sim city for real. And we've been there are various methodologies around now which could have been developed to engage citizens in contributing potentially to geodesign around the existing built form. So is geodesign a way of engaging people in ways that we've not been able to engage people before in decision making about their cities? Increasingly now, cities with the global recession over the last 4, 5, 6 years are having to run their cities, managing their cities with reduced resources, and certainly in the UK, a lot of planning departments have been making their planners redundant. They've been reducing the number of planners in their departments, and the first thing to go is public participation and engagement in people. It's a more top-down approach, pushing through plans which are not necessarily agreed by communities and residents as they sort of trim their budgets and kind of spend that kind of money. So is there a way in which geodesign could foster participatory planning and design, which have maybe not been previously possible? But one of the problems, and I started off doing a lot of research on PPGIS, so any people who might have been around sort of in the late 90s and all of the work that went on in Santa Barbara around the different NCGIA initiatives looking at PPGIS. Most participatory processes involve citizens responding to a set of design proposals for different scenarios for the future development of cities. But these often involve much less participants than you would normally expect, and often what we call in the literature referred to as the usual suspects. So you get the same kinds of people coming along to participate. It's very difficult to engage what we might call hard-to-reach groups. But we've been looking at ways in which you can potentially co-produce designs with citizens, co-produce plans, rather than coming up with top-down proposals and offering, say, option A, option B, option C. So we're starting to look at whether or not geodesign tools can change the approach to engaging people. So are there ways of collaborating and engaging citizens through these new design tools? And can we offer ways in which citizens themselves can be creating and amending designs and plans for their neighbourhoods? And in what way can this contribute to the idea of emerging idea of smart cities? One of the books that ESRI have produced about geodesign, there was this quote in there that geodesign helps to make it possible for the public to engage in the process and contribute in meaningful ways. Now, this could have been you could replace geodesign here with some other kind of technology. It could have been participatory GIS. When these new ideas come about, there's often triumphalism around these are going to solve all of our problems. But are we really convinced that geodesign is going to be this panacea and solve these problems? I just referred to PPGIS. The PPGIS literature kind of going back 10 years now, and things are still written about this. But has PPGIS really improved participation in our urban decision making? And we're sort of getting people to think about, well, will geodesign fall into the same trap? Not that geodesign is a bad thing. What I'm saying is, if people start saying, well, geodesign is going to be this solution to engaging people in decision making, we potentially fall into the same trap in the way that PPGIS was highlighted as, and I was one of the people highlighting this and writing about this at the time. But certainly evidence in the UK and certain parts of Europe has shown that really we've not changed the way in which people engage in decision making. But a recent project that we're literally finishing next month for the European Commission called Smart IP, this is Smart Metropolitan Areas Realised Through Innovation and People, and you always have to have an acronym for the European Commission, is a project that's run for the last few years. University of Manchester, myself and a colleague have been the academic leads on this, but we've actually been working with these 5 cities across Europe. And when I say smart, more about the citizens and smart citizens than in smart cities that we've been focusing on. How do you engage these people? And one of the most successful participatory technologies that we've discovered in this project has been the use of gamification. And the way this worked was initially, when we thought about this, we thought this will not work. It's a kind of gimmick. But the way it worked was because we got people doing online gamification. We used the city of Ghent for this. It engaged people in thinking about their communities, thinking about what was going on in their environments by playing a game in their neighbourhood. And by playing the game, people suddenly, the citizens of Ghent, suddenly started to realise that there were parts of their neighbourhoods that they'd never been in before, and there were things going on in parts of their neighbourhoods that they'd not been aware of, and they started pay more care and attention to what was going on in their neighbourhoods. And this then allowed the city to engage these citizens in things about the redevelopment of their neighbourhood. And it was through this idea of gamification. So then, as I said, to them becoming more connected with their neighbourhood. So what we're basically doing, and this is ongoing work at the moment, we're looking at how smart city developments can engage citizens in planning and potentially geo-designing of their city neighbourhood. I've got one of my PhD students is getting local residents to keep daily activity logs of their activities using simple geo-referencing tools. We're looking at sort of origin, destination data with them, but then where they're going via where and when. And then we're incorporating this into master plans for their neighbourhood. And we're also starting, those of you in Europe will be aware of the Horizon 2020 initiatives that are about to come on stream. I think the calls will be coming out. And we're going to be developing with our partners in the cities an idea of participatory geodesign in smart cities. There are some references at the end here, but I think my key message really in this short is, just be aware of the fact that, look at some of the mistakes that have been made before. There's a lot of hype around this technology that this will solve a lot of our solutions, and most of the evidence has shown in the past that when new technology comes along, it doesn't really change what's happening for most people in neighbourhoods.
Thank you very much, Richard, for that critical look, and also for providing us a pointer to that European project. So please contact Richard if you'd like to know either about the project or about his critical view. We're running up dangerously close to lunch, so I think we'll continue to our final speaker, and then we'll hopefully have a few minutes for overall discussion before we go downstairs.